on the 29th of March 1974, around the same time as the release of the Volkswagen Golf and the release of Stephen King's first novel Carrie. Another thing in China was also making its release. This release took place in Lintong County, some 30 kilometers northeast of the city of Xi'an, spelt Xian, in China's northwest. A drought had swept the countryside, which made the crops and the farmers thirsty for water. Farmer Zhifa and his 5 brothers decide to dig for a well near their village in the hopes of finding water. As Yang and his brothers dig the well, instead of finding water, they find something a lot more valuable. Something, let's say, made of terracotta. G'day everyone, welcome back to the Bamboo History Podcast. I'm your host Stephen, and yeah, I had a good break, I'm still alive and well, and I can't wait to get back into talking about history. If you're new to this show, the Bamboo History Podcast is a podcast about Chinese and East Asian history. As always, thank you everyone for your continued support of the podcast, for being keen learners of history. Okay, enough about me. It's time to get straight into today's episode. Many of you who are familiar with Chinese history may already know about Qin Shi Huang, the first person to declare himself as Emperor of China. But do many of you know about his life and about his exploits? Well, today we're going to talk about that. Qin Shi Huang, spelt Qinshihuang, was born in the year 259 BCE in the state of Zhou, one of the numerous Chinese city-states that existed in China at the time, in a period known as the Zhanguo, or Warring States period. Qin Shi Huang is the name given to him by future historians, which literally means the first emperor of Qin. His actual name was Yingzheng, spelt Yingzheng. Ying in Chinese means to win, and zheng means politics or governance. So, coincidentally, his name literally means to win in governance. His father was the Prince Yiren of the state of Qin, spelt Qin, and who later became the king of Qin in the year 250 BCE. Not a lot is mentioned about Qin Shi Huang, Yingzheng's childhood, but my belief is that his childhood wasn't really fun. You see, even though he was part of the Qin royal family, he was born in the state of Zhou because his father had been sent there as a political hostage. As the son of a political hostage, living in a land far, far away from your own home, Yingzheng would have lived with fear and lived reclusively. That is, until him and his family were able to return back home. This could maybe explain his desire to live larger in life in his later years. After his father, the Prince Yiren, and later the King of Qin, died in the year 247 BCE, Yingzheng ascended the throne as the new King of Qin. His reign as king was most noted for his success at conquering the other states and reunifying China as one, which he did so in the year 221 BCE. I will leave the conquests of these other states for another day, because if I talk about them now, this episode would take ages. So, once he conquered all the other states, he knew that calling himself a king wouldn't be appropriate. He now ruled these other states and their kings, so he was now above the status of a king. A king cannot rule other kings. So, he created a new title, Huangdi, or translated in English as Emperor, and became known as the first Huangdi, or Emperor of China, being better known as Qin Shi Huang. As the first emperor of a unified country, him and his new government had a lot to do. Instead of dividing up the land amongst lords, which created the problem of having numerous states during the Warring States period, he created administrative divisions, for example, commanderies, counties, townships, etc., that would feed up to the imperial government, which would centralize power into his hands. During the Warring States period, all these different city-states and states, which were effectively different countries, had their own measurement system, currency and writing systems. Qin Shi Huang and his government standardized all of this, creating uniform measurement systems, a uniform currency, and also a uniform written script, in order to remove division in the new empire and to bring everyone together as one. Numerous Chinese states before the Qin dynasty had erected walls to protect themselves against nomadic tribes from the north. But Qin Shi Huang removed these walls and erected new ones along the newly formed northern border. And this wall would form the famous Great Wall of China as we know today. Sadly though, the Qin dynasty Great Wall has disappeared, eroded away over time. But there's one thing that hasn't eroded and has survived to this day, and that is the Terracotta Warriors. On the 29th of March 1974 in Lintong County, as young Zhifa and his brothers are digging for water, his hoe struck something on the earth, something hard. Curious, he uncovered this thing and realized it was a terracotta figure of what looked to be a human being. When the others found out what he had uncovered, they told him to hastily bury it, as it was considered bad luck to have unearthed such a thing. But young Zhifa was curious of this terracotta figure, and carefully unearthed it, taking it back home to show his wife. When he came home, his wife was like, "Honey, did you find any water?" Young Zhifa replied, "Nah, but I found something cool. Look!" And he showed her the terracotta figure. His wife goes, "Oh wow, what is this? Looks ancient. And you said you found this deep in the ground?" Young Zhifa replied, "Yeah, we dug about 5 meters before I found this thing. Say, isn't the first emperor of China buried somewhere around here?" The wife replies, "Yeah, I think you have to take this to an expert for a closer look. Who knows? We've probably struck gold here." So young Zhifa sent the terracotta head to the cultural center, where the people there got excited, as they knew that this was part of the terracotta army created by Qin Shi Huang. And this triggered a frenzy that would bring the knowledge of this ancient army to the world. Having the word "to win" in your name clearly reflected Qin Shi Huang's ethos in life. His life was all about winning. And he had been winning so far in life. You know, he had become king, then he destroyed all the other city-states and created an empire, became emperor, and all that, yada yada yada. But there was one thing he wanted to beat, and that was death. In his later years, he began searching for an elixir of immortality, hoping to live forever, and he was very desperate in his search. He hired many alchemists to prepare him elixirs, although it was quite clear that those didn't work, so he kinda got scammed there. He travelled to places afar to search for the elixir himself, and he even sent a man to help him seek a mystical place named Peng Lai, along with hundreds of young boys and girls, to seek that elixir. According to legend, these people ended up in Japan and colonized the place. Alas, even the mighty Qin Shi Huang could not win against death, and in the year 210 BCE, he fell ill and died. Some people say that he had got sick from mercury poisoning, which was a key ingredient of one of these so-called elixirs that he had been taking. How ironic is that? The great emperor had vanished from the mortal world, but not before he commissioned one of the biggest tombs and army that the world has ever seen. Before I continue with this episode, I wanted to take a bit of time to give a shout out to another banger history podcast. This podcast is called Australian Histories Podcast, and it's hosted by a fellow Aussie named Jenny. The podcast certainly lives up to its tagline, Brilliant Stories from Australia's Past, and really goes into depth on the history of Australia. Jenny's podcast has episodes ranging from famous Australian personalities to intriguing stories of the past and to a certain war against a group of emu birds. I personally loved her episode on the construction of the overland telegraph line and really appreciated at how she fleshed out aspects of that history, such as the hostile takeover of Indigenous Australian land for construction of that telegraph line, which I had previously not heard much about before. And also, she's got a very clear and soothing voice, which makes it all in all a great podcast for any of you interested in learning about the history of the most ancient land of this earth. That's Australia, if you didn't figure that out. So yeah, here's now a 30-second intro from the Australian Histories podcast host herself.
Hello history fans, I'm Jenny from the Australian Histories podcast, where we take a fresh look at some of the brilliant stories from Australia's past. You can dip in and out of the topic episodes that interest you and learn a little about the important and iconic incidents, people and places of Australia. Topics range from ironclad bushrangers, British convicts and intrepid explorers to the beloved platypus or the mighty emu. Have a look at the episodes available at australianhistoriespodcast.com.au. That's history spelt with IES. Cheers everyone.
So yeah, please check out Jenny's podcast. I'll leave a link to it in the episode's description box. Now, back to the episode. Qin Shi Huang had actually already began his project of constructing his tomb as soon as he had become king, way back when he was a teenager. Think about it, what were you doing as a teenager? Certainly not building tombs, right? His entire tomb, including the Terracotta Warriors, took around 40 years to finish, and involved a total of 720,000 workers across these 40 years. The emperor's tomb itself is underneath a 76-meter pyramid-shaped tomb mound, and to this date, no one, that we know of, has entered the tomb itself. The Terracotta Army, or Bing Ma Yong in Chinese, is located to the east of the emperor's tomb, and the purpose of this army was to guard the emperor into the afterlife. There are an estimated 8,000 terracotta soldiers, 130 chariots, and 670 horses as part of the Terracotta Army. By horses, I mean terracotta horses. As of now, only 2,000 terracotta soldiers have been excavated, with more being excavated each day. The soldiers range from around 175 centimeters, that's around 5'8", 5'9", to around 2 meters tall, which is around 6'6", 6'7". Each soldier has a unique appearance, and it appears that they are modelled after real-life soldiers. Analysis of the appearance of these soldiers show that they look pretty similar to modern Chinese people, which I think is pretty cool. It shows that Chinese people haven't changed that much in terms of looks for 2,000 years. The soldiers can also be differentiated by rank, based on their clothing. For example, you can tell who the junior and senior ranked soldiers are based on their headgear, armour, and weaponry. As all the faces of all the warriors are unique, you would also note that the more senior ranked officers look older than the junior ranked officers. Whilst most of the Terracotta Warriors are infantrymen, which are foot soldiers, there are some that are chariot soldiers, archers, and cavalrymen. The detail is immaculate. For example, amongst the archers, there are both standing archers as well as half-kneeling archers, and they are positioned exactly as they would be in a real-life army formation. The obvious difference between a cavalryman and an infantryman, or foot soldier, is that the cavalryman has a horse with him. But as you know, the Terracotta army is modelled exactly like the real army at the time, and this is reflected in their armour. For example, the cavalryman's armour is more plain and lightweight than the infantryman's armour, and this is done to boost their speed whilst riding on a horse. If you look at the Terracotta Warriors today, you will notice that they all have no colour. But in reality, all the warriors were painted with colours. Bright colours, in fact. You see, after the warriors were created, lacquer was applied to them before bright pigments were applied to them, with different colours reflecting the difference in rank. Generally, the soldiers had black hair, pink faces, purple or red gowns, black armour, light green pants, and black shoes. Unfortunately, we don't see these colours anymore on the soldiers. Reason being is that these colours were made from mineral substances, which faded over time, over 2,000 years. The other reason was that the lacquer layer that the colours were on detached from the warriors, and when excavated, the lacquer layer would fall off, especially after being exposed to the air outside. And then, when the lacquer fell off, along with it, fell off the colours. It wasn't just the soldiers that formed the Terracotta army. Acrobats, dancers, and officials also existed, suggesting that the emperor took with him an entire political system into the afterlife, rather than just an army. Maybe he thought that he was going to rule China, even after he was dead. On some of the warriors, for example, under their arms, the names of the workers who built the warriors can be found, with their names either carved or stamped. We admire the grandeur of the entire army in the present day, but the construction process wasn't that glamorous. Labourers and artisans who worked on this project did so under tough conditions. The emperor did not give two flying Fs about their well-being. And the people who worked on this project were all killed to keep the whole thing a secret. Despite the power the Terracotta army would give the emperor in his afterlife, it would be useless against people of the mortal world. A good example of this is that the most evident damage it suffered was through looting. I've never seen the Terracotta Warriors myself, but you notice that many soldiers have their hands stuck out, but they're clenching thin air. Originally, they weren't just clenching thin air, but actual weapons. It is believed that these weapons were looted in the period right after Qin Shi Huang's death by rebel soldiers who needed to find weapons to fight. Despite the discovery of the Terracotta Warriors, the biggest mystery still remains, and that is the tomb of the emperor himself. As I mentioned earlier, Qin Shi Huang's tomb lies to the west of the Terracotta Army, underneath a massive pyramid-shaped mound. But to this date, no one has ever set foot in the emperor's actual tomb, that we know of. Why is that? Well, archaeologists fear that the tomb has been booby-trapped, and that opening the tomb would cause irreparable damage to it. Historian Sima Qian has recorded a description of his tomb, and describes that in the tomb there are crossbows and arrows primed to shoot anyone who tries to enter the tomb, with mercury flowing everywhere around the tomb like river systems. So there's fear amongst the archaeologists that entering the tomb would be very dangerous. But nowadays, there are talks of using X-ray technology to survey the inside of the tomb. So hopefully one day we will know what is exactly in the emperor's final resting place. Today, the mausoleum of Qin Shi Huang has become a famous tourist spot in Xi'an in China. In 1979, after its discovery, the Terracotta Army was opened to the public. And since then, over 150 million visits have been recorded, both from China and abroad. In 1987, the mausoleum of Qin Shi Huang, which includes the Terracotta Army, was designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. UNESCO describes the Terracotta Warriors as a testament of, quote, exceptional technical and artistic qualities, end quote. For a select group of terracotta soldiers, they have been lucky enough to travel internationally as exhibitions, and they have been displayed all over the world in places such as London, New York, Santiago de Chile, and even right here in Australia. I hope those soldiers flew business class. My final thoughts are that the Terracotta Army is truly a marvel, considering they are still intact, albeit without much colour, after thousands of years. The army has allowed us to realise the might of Qin Shi Huang, the strength of his army, and the facial appearances of Chinese men back in the day. But it's also revealed to us the ruthlessness of the emperor. As he, buried people alive with him, he killed all the artisans and architects who helped build the tomb and its warriors for him, and he got thousands of people to work tirelessly for him for this one project, when they could have been doing other fun things in life. After listening to this episode, listeners, what do you think about this situation? And if you've visited the Terracotta Army, what are your thoughts? I'd love to hear about it. So yeah, that's it. That's the end of the episode of the Bing Ma Yong Terracotta Warriors of Qin Shi Huang. I hope you all learnt something new. I certainly did. Remember everyone, before you leave, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, follow me on my socials, whether that be Instagram, TikTok, and visit my website. I'll leave all those details in the description box below. And as always, I'm very glad to be back talking about history. And in the description box is also my contact details. So if you've got any feedback, topic suggestions, or just want to have a chat, please reach out to me. So yeah, it's time to go now. Thanks everyone for listening to today's episode. Enjoy the rest of your day or evening, and I'll see you all next time on the Bamboo History Podcast. Bye for now.